Have you ever stood in a room full of people, dressed in your best, only to realize you were moments away from being humiliated by the one person who was supposed to protect you the most? The gala was supposed to be a celebration of the firm, of our success, of the people behind the projects. I wore a sleek black dress, one I'd splurged on after weeks of hesitation. Thomas had insisted. "You should at least look the part," he'd said, smiling that rehearsed smile of his. I thought it was encouragement. Looking back now, I think he just wanted to set the stage for my downfall. He took the mic halfway through dinner, confident, charming, the perfect partner everyone envied. And then, with his glass raised and his voice amplified, he said it. "Some people just aren't built for success. My wife here. Living proof." Laughter, uncomfortable, scattered, broke out like a crack across glass. I couldn't breathe. My fingers tightened around the stem of my champagne glass. I couldn't believe this was happening. But no one stopped him. 15 years of marriage had taught me how to keep smiling through pain. I stood there paralyzed, while Thomas laid my so-called failures bare to 200 people, our co-workers, friends, senior partners. He mocked my dreams, my work, my struggles, and did it all while maintaining that smug, flawless grin that had once convinced me he was my biggest supporter. The worst part: he was stone-cold sober. 3 days earlier, I'd found out I was being considered for a major promotion, sustainability director. A role Thomas had been gunning for since joining the firm. Through my connections. That night, his little speech wasn't a drunken accident. It was sabotage. As the founder awkwardly took back the mic, trying to salvage the event with quarterly updates, I excused myself. My legs moved on instinct toward the restroom. I didn't cry. Couldn't. I stood in the stall, head pressed to the wall, just breathing, trying not to fall apart. Then my phone buzzed. Text. From him. "Don't make a scene. We'll talk at home." That was the moment. The exact moment something inside me snapped. Not in a loud, angry way, but like the final fray of a thread that's been pulled too tight for too long. That's when I knew I'd had enough. I didn't go home. I went to a hotel nearby, still in that same dress, sat on the bed, and started writing a plan. I had 24 hours. Just like he'd tried to tear me down in one night, I'd take the same time to rise. The sunrise painted the city in gold as I sat by the hotel window, sipping bitter coffee and staring at my laptop. My inbox had exploded. Messages from colleagues, some checking in with genuine concern, others clearly fishing for gossip. But one email mattered more than the rest. My office. 9 a.m. "We need to discuss last night. Marcus, the founder." I had exactly 3 hours to prepare. I stepped into the shower and let the scalding water strip away years of silence. Thomas had spent years chipping away at my confidence with carefully masked concern. "When I wanted to lead a project. That's a lot of pressure, babe. Remember how stressed you got last time? When I was invited to speak at a conference. You worked too hard. I got us a weekend getaway. Why won't you let me take care of you?" And every time I hesitated, he won. I thought I was compromising. I thought I was being a good wife. Well, I was being controlled. I dried off, dressed in an emergency outfit I kept at the office gym, and opened the notes I'd been collecting for 6 months. Emails Thomas had sent pretending to be me, files mysteriously altered before submission, client meetings accidentally cancelled. All of it adding up to a single gut-wrenching truth. He wasn't just sabotaging my career. He was orchestrating my failure. I remembered when I told him I wanted to run a half marathon. "Sweetheart, you've always struggled with endurance." Or the time I mentioned taking Italian classes. Languages were never your strength, remember? Every dream I had was quietly dismantled, not with open aggression, but with just enough doubt to make me question myself. By the time I arrived at the office at 8:30, I wasn't nervous. I was furious. Calmly, coldly furious. Colleagues stopped whispering the moment I walked in. Rachel, one of the few who had always supported me, caught my arm near the break room. "We all know he was out of line," she whispered. "Nobody's taking it seriously." But that was the problem. They were. And they had been for a long time. Last night was just the explosion. The fire had been smoldering for years. At 8:55, I knocked on Marcus's door. Thomas was already there, dressed like the perfect corporate husband, with his sorry face on full display. "Darling," he said, reaching out like nothing had happened. I stepped back. I wasn't here to play the doting wife anymore. Marcus looked from me to him, obviously uncomfortable. "Let's clear the air about last night," he began, but Thomas launched in first. "I want to sincerely apologize," Thomas said smoothly. "Stress, a drink too many. It was an unfortunate mistake. I would never intentionally hurt my wife." Every word out of his mouth was a lie. But the old me would have let him say it and smiled through clenched teeth. "Not today." "Before we move forward," I said, opening my laptop and turning the screen toward Marcus, "there's something you should see." And just like that I started laying out the evidence. At first, Marcus looked confused, almost skeptical, as if I was blowing things out of proportion. But as he began scrolling, email logs, calendar manipulations, project file alterations, his expression shifted. He sat up straighter. He squinted at the screen. This is from your home network?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "While I was logged into the office system. The timestamps line up. I wasn't even home." Thomas gave a short, nervous laugh. "She's clearly having some kind of breakdown," he said, not even looking at me. "This is exactly what I meant when I said she might not be ready for more responsibility." But Marcus wasn't buying it anymore. He looked back at the screen, frowning. "There's more," I said, pulling a sealed envelope from my bag and sliding it across the desk. "This is from a digital forensics specialist I've been working with for 6 months. Everything has been verified. Chain of custody, timestamps, IP logs. It's all there." Thomas's smirk vanished. You had me investigated," he snapped, eyes finally locking with mine. "No," I said calmly. "I documented the sabotage you didn't think I'd notice. And I had a professional confirm it. That's what people do when they're done playing defense." Marcus opened the envelope. Silence filled the room except for the sound of papers flipping. Then he looked up at Thomas. "If this is accurate," he said slowly, "it's not just misconduct. This is termination-level behavior. Potentially criminal." Thomas lost it. The mask dropped. "You wouldn't dare," he hissed. "Everything you have is because of me. Who do you think convinced the partners to keep you after the Mitchell Tower fiasco?" I tilted my head. "You mean the numbers that mysteriously changed right before submission? The ones I triple-checked? I've got that documented too." Marcus stood up. "I need to speak with the other partners. Effective immediately. You're both to remain separate and on call for the rest of the day. HR will be contacting you." As he left with the files, Thomas leaned in close, his voice low and venomous. "You think you're clever," he said. "But you've just destroyed everything we built. When I'm done telling the board about your emotional instability, you'll be lucky to design doghouses." I stood slowly, smoothing my skirt. "That's the thing about being underestimated, Thomas. People never see you coming." Then I smiled, paused at the door and added, "And don't bother deleting anything. The cloud backups. They're not in the house." I spent the rest of the morning in a glass-walled conference room with HR and the legal team, answering questions, walking them through months of evidence, explaining every manipulated file, every altered deadline. The nerves I expected never came. Just a strange, focused calm. It was like everything inside me had already snapped into place. Rachel brought me lunch, chicken salad and coffee, and stayed with me even though she didn't have to. "The whole office is buzzing," she whispered. "Thomas is with the partners now. He doesn't look good. Have they brought in anyone from Harrington?" I asked, referring to our biggest client, the one Thomas almost cost us with his meddling. "Alex and Priya both. And the IT director too." She hesitated. "There's more. Thomas. He's been telling people you've been having issues with prescription meds. Said it's why you've been paranoid." I closed my eyes for a second. Course. That was the next move in his playbook. He'd tried she's emotional, then she's unstable, and now, she's an addict. Did anyone believe him? Yes. Rachel looked furious. Not anymore. Samantha from accounting told HR that he tried to get her to forge expense reports last quarter. Blamed you. But when she asked you about it directly, you knew nothing. I hadn't even known about Samantha. How many other people had he tried to use? How many had quietly helped me without even realizing it? 3:30 my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Roof access. Door code. 5829. Meet me at 4. Important. Marcus. He wanted to talk privately. By 3:55 I was in the elevator, heart pounding. This could go either way. Best case. Thomas was out. Worst. They were firing us both to avoid the scandal. The rooftop garden was empty except for Marcus, who stood staring at the skyline, his back to me. Thomas is being escorted from the building, he said, turning around. His accounts are suspended. There will be a full audit of every project he touched. Exhaled. Relief first. Then the weight of what that meant. This wasn't just over, it was starting to turn. And me? Yes. That depends, he said, suddenly looking tired. The sustainability director role. We were planning to announce the appointment next week. Are you still interested? Blinked. After all this? Especially after all this, he replied. You showed integrity, restraint, and strategy in a situation that would have broken most people. That's leadership. A part of me didn't know what to say. But the rest of me, the part that had been silent for far too long, knew exactly what to do. Yes, I said, steady and clear. I'm ready. Good, Marcus said. Because the announcement goes out tomorrow. You've got 24 hours to prepare. As I walked back to the elevator, the sun dipped behind the buildings, casting the rooftop in soft gold. And I smiled to myself. Thomas gave me 24 hours to feel like a failure. Now, I'd use those same 24 hours to show the world exactly who I was without him. The next morning, sunlight streamed into my brownstone as I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the emerald green blazer I'd picked out for today. Bold, unapologetic, nothing like the black dress from the gala. I looked at my reflection, not just checking my outfit, but studying the woman looking back at me. She looked different. Stronger. Quieter but not silent anymore. Before leaving the office the day before, I'd stopped by home, changed every password, called a locksmith, gathered the last of my handwritten notes, post-its Thomas had left on my desk like landmines. Are you sure about this design? You always overthink these layouts. I collected them all like evidence at a crime scene. When Thomas got home and realized he was locked out, the messages started flying in. This is childish. Let me in. You're making a fool of yourself. Everything in that house is half mine. You're unstable. The partners will hear about this. I hadn't answered a single one. Instead, I'd poured a glass of the Cabernet he always said was wasted on me, and soaked in the tub he claimed wasn't practical for our lifestyle. And by morning, the tone had shifted completely. We can work this out. I was under so much pressure, baby. You know I love you, right? Then, the final act of desperation. I made you. Without me, you're nothing. That one made me laugh. He still didn't get it. At 8:45 a.m., I walked into the firm's conference room. The energy was strange. Hushed whispers, curious stares, the kind of buzz that meant something big was about to go down. People were waiting. Some to see if I would break. Others just to see if the rumors were true. At precisely 9 o'clock, Marcus entered with the partners and the head of HR. He didn't waste time. There have been significant personnel changes, he began, voice even but firm. And I want to address them before speculation spreads. You could have heard a pin drop. Yesterday we received credible evidence of professional misconduct and internal sabotage. After a thorough review, we've terminated Thomas Reynolds effective immediately. Whispers. A few people turned to glance at me. I kept my expression neutral. We'll be conducting audits on all related projects, Marcus continued, and reaching out to clients as needed. This firm does not tolerate unethical behavior, regardless of title or tenure. Then his tone changed. Now, moving forward. And just like that, the moment came. I'm pleased to announce that after unanimous board approval, we're appointing a new director to lead our sustainability division. Someone whose vision, ethics, and performance have shaped the very foundation of our firm's green initiatives. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. From the quiet thunder of validation. Allison Reynolds has consistently shown exceptional leadership and dedication. Her work on the West Side development saved the client millions and set new industry standards. We are confident she will take this department to even greater heights. Applause began. Slow at first, then stronger. Some stood. Others didn't. Thomas had his allies and always would. But in that moment, none of them mattered. I walked to the front of the room, catching a glimpse through the glass wall. Thomas, standing in the lobby, somehow having talked his way past reception. His face was unreadable. Mine wasn't. I turned away from him and faced my colleagues. "Thank you," I said into the mic. "This past day has been revealing. But challenges tend to show us who we really are, and who we can become." I outlined my plans for the sustainability department with a voice steadier than I ever remembered it being. I didn't have to prove myself anymore. I just had to lead. As I spoke, I caught the image of security gently guiding Thomas out of the building in the reflection behind the crowd. That chapter was closed. By mid-afternoon, I was in my new office, the very one Thomas had been coveting since day one. It was spacious, sunlit, and perched on the corner of the floor with a view that overlooked the river. A place designed for someone who had earned their seat, not someone who had stolen credit to get there. As I arranged my materials and skimmed through notes for my first team meeting, my assistant knocked softly. "There's someone here to see you. No appointment, but she says it's important." Mrs. Catherine Reynolds. My mother-in-law. I hesitated for just a moment. My relationship with Catherine had always been complicated. Formal. She was a retired judge, revered in legal circles, and always blind to her son's true nature. "Send her in," I said, bracing for a defense of Thomas. I expected veiled judgment or guilt-tripping diplomacy. But when she walked in, perfectly composed as always, something in her eyes stopped me. There was no smugness, no defensiveness, just exhaustion. "Congratulations on the promotion," she said flatly, declining my offer to sit. Then she placed a small flash drive on my desk. "What's this?" I asked cautiously. "Evidence," she said. "Thomas doesn't know I'm here. And he doesn't know this exists." I stared at it. "He did the same thing to his ex-girlfriend at his previous firm in Boston," she continued. "Said she had mental health issues. That she tried to ruin his career out of jealousy." I looked at her, stunned. "I should have given this to you years ago," she said, voice low. "But I kept telling myself he'd changed. That he just needed the right partner. I told myself the same things about his father for 30 years. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in a long time. "Don't make the same mistake I did." Then she turned and walked out. I sat in silence, holding that flash drive like it weighed 100 pounds. Suddenly, this wasn't just my story. It had been rehearsed, recycled, refined across years. I hadn't just escaped Thomas. I'd stopped a cycle that could have continued for decades. At 5:30 p.m., exactly 24 hours since the gala, I sent my first official email as director, a company-wide announcement about a mentorship initiative for women and minorities in architecture. A program rooted in everything I'd once needed but never received. Minutes later, Marcus responded. "Proved. Budget allocated. Let's change the culture, not just the buildings." The sun was beginning to set, casting the city in that soft golden light that makes everything feel like possibility. I stood by the window, gazing out at the skyline I helped shape. Steel, glass, and dreams all stretching toward the sky. 6 months passed in a whirlwind. projects, speaking engagements, awards. The firm was thriving and so was I. The mentorship program had grown citywide. Our Eastridge design, the one Thomas tried to sabotage, won a national award. And while the divorce was as ugly as expected, his lawyer tried everything from emotional instability claims to financial manipulation. My own legal team dismantled it piece by piece. Ironically, my best lawyer had been Catherine's referral. When his team offered a settlement, drop all claims to my retirement and inheritance if I signed an NDA, I said no. The truth isn't negotiable, I told my lawyer. And I meant it. I still had hard days. 15 years of psychological warfare doesn't just vanish. Sometimes I'd catch myself second-guessing a decision. His voice echoing in my head. Are you sure? Didn't you struggle with this before? On those days I opened my journal. Not a record of his behavior anymore, but of my victories. Big and small. My own proof in my own words. Then the gala rolled around again. Same venue. Same event. 1 year later that I almost skipped it. But that would have given him too much power over my story. So I chose a red dress this time. Bright, bold, impossible to ignore. And I walked in alone, head high. The whispers were different now. The Westridge project is stunning, one client said. Our daughter is thriving thanks to your mentorship program, said a partner's wife. Marcus found me by the champagne fountain. Revenue from your division is up 22%, he said with a grin. You've done more than we ever imagined. Smiled. Thank you for taking a chance on me. He shook his head. I didn't take a chance. I just finally got out of your way. Later that evening I stepped onto the balcony. The city sparkled below like a galaxy of new beginnings. My phone buzzed. Catherine again. Saw your Hudson presentation in Architectural Digest. Thomas did too. He knows now what he lost. I didn't reply. Because it wasn't about him anymore. Never really was. As I stood there, breathing in the night air, I realized the truth. When he'd called me a failure in front of everyone, it wasn't the end. It was the spark. The real success wasn't the promotion or the title or the applause. It was finding myself in the wreckage of his lies. Building a future brick by brick, truth by truth. And the sweetest revenge was never about proving him wrong. It was about proving myself right. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or silenced, know this: your voice matters. Your truth matters. And it's never too late to reclaim your power. Speech Balloon, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Thumbs up, like the video if you believe in rising stronger after being torn down. Bell, and don't forget to subscribe, because we're telling more stories that remind you your worth isn't defined by others. It's defined by you. See you in the next one. Sparkles.